Melancholy in a glass. I had been writing all morning, and I was sick of my words. Just words and more words. Nothing I hadn't already said before. I was just wasting time. It was time for a walk. I put on my hat and gloves and stepped out the door. It was a gray day, damp, cold. The remains of last week's snow sulked in dingy, dwindling piles along the edges of the sidewalk. I tried to hop over the slush in the gutters, but came up short, splashing the dirty water onto my pant legs. I did my best to step around the patches of ice in the alley. No need for a broken neck if I could help it. I trudged on past the empty gazebo in South Park. I thought that there must be an algorithm for happiness, some kind of 2 plus 2 equals 4, but I've never been able to figure it out. That day life was nothing more than a jumble of zeros. I had finally made my way as far as Amy's coffee shop. I figured at least I might stop in for a glass of iced tea. I didn't exactly intend to drown my sorrows, but at least I might water them down a little with some peace and quiet. A little distraction. Something. It was 30 minutes to closing. At that hour the place should have been nearly empty, but when I walked in the coffee shop was jammed. Wall to wall. Chattering people crowding the back tables. Chaos in the kitchen in the front, and more customers backed halfway up to the front door. Noise and confusion. I almost turned and walked out, but since I wasn't going anywhere anyway, I just stood there at the end of the line, on hold, the din and dissonance droning on in my head as I waited. I waited a little longer, and then, after some interminable time, I ordered my iced tea. And that's what finally tore it. Amy's was out of my tea, my black currant iced tea. In the rush and ruckus they simply hadn't gotten around to making more. I sighed and settled for regular tea. What else could I do? It had finally gotten too late for me to change my mind, and my mind had already turned to mush anyway. Tea was tea. Add ice and there you have it. Iced tea. I took the 2 steps up to nowhere and sat down at one of the bar stools at the end of the counter and slouched. That was just that. I had just sagged into the eye of a storm, a hurricane of clamor and absurdity. Perhaps no more than a tropical depression, or a polar vortex. Or what? What? The words didn't matter. They never had. Scraps of sandwiches, or the fillings for omelets, who could tell what was what? It was all just slops and detritus littering the floor. Egg drool and waffle batter splattered the counters. Greasy pans and spatulas carelessly tossed towards the sink. Clutter, more clutter, and the creaky old espresso maker just kept on hissing out one shot after another. And it didn't get any better when I turned around. Noisy people talking loudly about absolutely nothing that could ever possibly matter. Wasted breath. And back in the far corner, the dirty dish bin teetered so high that adding just one more sticky plate with dried-on egg would topple the whole grimy mess. Dirty plates and cups and silverware crashing to the floor. I turned back and looked down at my notebook, searching through a few notes that I had made the previous week. Scratchings and unintelligible scrawls. I was wasting my time. Chaos, that's all it was. Nothing but noise and confusion in a random, meaningless world. Now I suppose I must digress. In spite of my brooding, my endless, pointless ruminations, I couldn't really say I was particularly unhappy. But here's the pointless point. Neither could I say that I was happy. I was nothing more than just one more guy in a coffee shop. It just happened to be me. It just happened to be this coffee shop. Frankly, everything might not have happened at all, but it did. So here we are. But for this? People waiting, people rushing around. Either way, it was just one more cup of coffee after another, one more dollop of gravy over biscuits. What difference did it all make? What? We're all just here, wasting time, lost souls lost in a universe that doesn't care. You can't help yourself, you can't help anyone else. Let's face it, life is mostly something to endure. Sure, we might manage to scrounge up a little happiness now and then, but in the end, happiness is like a dribble of cream in bitter coffee, and then we pretend to like it that way. But really, we're just here, almost nowhere. And me? I was just drinking a glass of the wrong iced tea, looking out through dirty windows into the same old grayness. And in the end, who's going to care? I slumped deeper down, wallowing in the muddy puddle of my dreary self. I had half an inch of lukewarm tea in the bottom of my glass. The ice had melted. Another metaphor? Or just more wasted words? I was drifting in the doldrums of February. I sat, beset, besought, befuddled. I tried to shake the words out of my head, and then finally it was 3 minutes to closing time. I was staring at the watery tea in the bottom of my glass when I heard the coffee shop phone ring. One of the baristas picked it up, and then, with half an ear, I overheard her saying this: "I'm just having the worst day I've ever had in my life." And then she caught herself. Well, maybe I'm being a little overdramatic. I laughed. I swear, I laughed out loud and I couldn't stop laughing. What a sap I was. Life wasn't really so bad. Not that bad at all. I stood up to put on my hat and gloves and I stepped outside. I turned and headed for the river. Nothing had changed. The sky was gray. The last of last week's snow was melting. It looked like spring might be just around the corner. The sidewalks were filled with people coming and going, smiling and laughing. I could see happy people telling each other about happy things. Sure, maybe what they said to one another was about nothing at all, but what did it matter? I mean, I may not know how it works, but I know happy when I see it. At Liberty Hall I passed a young couple. She was smiling at him while he was smiling at her, taking a picture that would likely just get lost on their phone. They were young, but old enough to know better, and somehow they had gotten to 4. But it wasn't just 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4. This whole business was never meant to add up. I knew that. How could I have forgotten it? And even if everything is all just one big joke, it might still be funny. I walked on. When I got to the Kaw River Bridge, I saw that the river was completely frozen over. Jumbles of white ice like a crumpled lid, locking the river down tight. The Kaw River behind the dam was jammed with ice all the way back to the turnpike, and probably farther upstream than that. At some point, the whole thing was just going to let go and come crashing downstream. The current at the dam would triple or quadruple in an instant. Chunks of ice would come suddenly spilling over the dam into glorious splashings, rushing water and chunks of ice leaping up and spraying high into the air with abandon. The river breaking up into a cacophony of joyous laughter. So is it a metaphor? Maybe it's real life. It doesn't matter. It was never about the words. Life is what it is, so just laugh. Laugh. And remember what Heraclitus said. You never step into the same river twice. So folks, if you're still listening, you won't see me again. Me and Heraclitus are taking the last train to the coast, and when I get there I'm going to catch a spaceship to the moon, maybe somewhere beyond. And you know what else? I might turn out to be wrong about just about everything, but not about the laughter. Let's face it, nobody is ever going to figure it all out. Billions of years, quasars and quarks, a mud puddle and a moment in a coffee shop. Here's what I think. Maybe not always, but sometimes. Sometimes when I'm not stuck inside my own head, I think that if you care about people, and who knows why anyone would, but sometimes we do. Sometimes 2 + 2 can equal 5. And so, folks, here we are. Here we go. Sometimes you just can't help yourself. So what? Nobody really can. And then out of nowhere you laugh. It's the funniest thing. It's like the effect comes before the cause. Trust me, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know happy when I see it.